what you go through. Put my lighter in.
So let me start off by saying that this book took me much longer to read than I thought it would. Book being Sister Outsider. It's a small book relatively, but as you can see, I had a lot to say about this book, a lot to think about, a lot to just process. This book may be, thus far, and I've read a lot of books in this program and in general, but this book may be one of the best books that I have read in my life. No hyperbole. First off, started off with a chapter about Russia. I didn't really get it. I didn't understand its relevance, but either way, I think it provided context into her thought process. Like bell hooks, her thought process starts off at the focal point of a Black woman and everything else kind of follows after that, which again, I just think is amazing, which may be a staple in Black feminist thought and womanism and things like that. So maybe I should just get used to it. Awesome. But the overall thing that I took from this book would be that in order for us to be unified, we don't have to be homogenous. Like, we don't have to be all the same. We could be everything that makes us different and still be unified and celebrate those differences, as opposed to using them to other each other, if that makes any sense. Just the first thought, without even having to look at my notes, I can go off the top of my head and talk about things that sort of blew me away. The chapter about using the erotic in our everyday lives, and of course, me like everybody else, because I tried. The thing about me is when I get excited about something and I learn something, I want to tell everybody about it. So when I read that chapter, my mind was blown away. So I tried to tell everybody about me. Like me, thought about erotic as something that is sexual or pornographic in any kind of way. And I'm trying to explain to them, like I just learned, that it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's about just feminine power, everything that makes us feminine, everything that makes us woman, using that energy as a form of connecting with people and just living our everyday lives, and how powerful that kind of connection to each other can be, and how experiencing that kind of connection sort of heightens the expectations and demands of everything around you: work, children, relationships, love, friendships, all of those kind of things. Powerful, powerful thing that I have been, one of my mentors tried to tell me about that before, because of course she's a Black feminist thought scholar herself, and she tried to tell me about embracing that, not in the terms that Audre Lorde did, but in similar terms, and I didn't really get it, but I get it now. And so in the book she talks about how when we have that kind of connection, we are taught or conditioned rather to turn away from it, but instead lean into it, right? And so I do that now in work and in some of my friendships, and it's different. It's a type of, as when I talk to my friend about it, it's the type of vulnerability to allow yourself to be seen in such a way. Things like that. I'm interested in seeing what happens with my relationships as I let myself be seen and allow the energy that I have with people, male, female, Black, white, the energy that I have, if I let that flow and not turn away from it. If I allow myself to, as Brene Brown says, take down the 10-ton shield that keeps us separate and really allow myself to be seen. I'm very interested in what happens there. And also how that plays into my identity as a Black woman that is a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm interested in how that plays out. That. And also when we think about vulnerability, it's also in the chapter where she talked about raising her son. And she talked about how she, in some parts of her, wanted to, when he was getting bullied, wanted to encourage him to be strong and whatever be a man means. And she said, and one of her friends asked her, have you ever thought about telling Jonathan about a time when you were afraid, like how he is right now? And she had never thought about that. But that's also the same thing with the power of vulnerability, when you can share with someone a time where you've been in that same place, as opposed to telling them to not be how you are without explaining the context in which you experience the same kind of fears, opening yourself up and allowing yourself to be seen. One of the things that was kind of difficult to read about the book was there's so much zeitgeist in the book that I don't understand, because I'm 28. So there are a lot of people and instances that she's referencing that and I don't have a problem doing because I'm a doctoral student, but I have to go and look these people up, like Robert Staples, and she wrote a letter to, she wrote a couple letters, but her conversation with Adrienne Rich, had never heard of Adrienne Rich, her letter to Mary Daly. All these are people that I had to go back and look in order to get context into who they are now, because I had no idea. But it did provide a much deeper understanding once I did look them up. But there was just so much zeitgeist in the writing that it was kind of hard for me to follow, being that I think this book was written, let's see, well, it was copyrighted in 1984. It's 2 years before I was born, so just to put that out there. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And I think I did talk about this in the last video, using my education as a way, and I view education as a master's tool to almost infiltrate the system and deconstruct it from within, as opposed to trying to tear away and chip away at the master's house from the outside. And the frustration that I have been feeling with that, in that more becoming a master than more becoming a master of my own, as opposed to being someone who is trying to dismantle the master's house, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of double consciousness that exists in that, but I thought it was just the conversation around that was amazing, that I had never understood prior to reading the book. So she says, those of us who stand outside the circle of society's definition of acceptable women, those of us who have been forged into the crucibles of difference, those of us who are poor, those of us who are lesbians, those of us who are Black, who are older, know that survival is not an academic skill. I can just totally relate to all of that. All of that. I think the whole book is simply amazing. And she talks about, and then she talked about the expectation of education. And it gets into the oppressor conversation again from Paulo Freire, about becoming so burdened with the oppressor's issues that they become yours. And it's not my job to educate people about Black women. It's not my job to educate heterosexual people about, queer people. It's not my job to educate men about women. That's not my burden to carry. But so often it feels like, in class, being the token Black woman, and thankfully in our program I'm not that person, but it feels like our burden to bear. As a Black woman, and this is a chapter about anger, as a Black woman, it says, in spite of a world that hates our very existence outside of our service to it. And I thought, does society hate me? And then I had a very quick answer. And when you look at situations where young Black men are being murdered by police, and nothing's being done about it, when you look at what's happening with women across more specifically right now on college campuses with sexual abuse and rape, and nothing being done about it, the fact that I have to be afraid when I walk outside at night by myself because I'm a Black woman, the fact that I'm petrified of being pulled over by the police, because my affect, I don't have any hair, so when they pull me over initially, I may appear to be a Black male. Even still, I'm a Black woman, so that doesn't make it any better. But just hate seems like such a strong word, and maybe just to face that realization, like, what if, I learned in one of the counseling classes that I took, what would it mean if America did hate all parts of my identity? What if I was essentially an enemy of the state? What would that mean for how I navigate society? What would it mean for how I conduct myself? How I plan to raise a family? Do I want to live here? What would it mean if I was truly an outsider? And those things are all very disturbing, but it seems very true and very real for me um, right now. And so I don't know. It would mean, it would just suck. And she talks about how um, that anger that has been given to us and thus passed through us has become so much a part of who we are. And it's like she said, it's like a pond of molten lava that just sort of builds inside of her. And it allows her, or I don't even want to say allow because that sounds like a good thing, but it results in her spewing that anger and that hatred out onto people, most often people that look like her. And I thought about how people always complain about how it's hard to work for a Black woman and how we vilify each other all the time. And then it's the quote that says, I don't know if I wrote it down. Did I? Yes, it says, each of us bears the face that hatred seeks. Oh my goodness. And I thought that it's just, I can see that even within various pockets of Black women where we do that to each other. And it's because society has done it to us so much that we don't even know how any other way to relate to each other, other than just little spitfires of anger and hatred and disgust for one another. And she talks about how we know at our core that our foremothers, used to love each other and how we revered each other so highly. And we know that, but we can't get to the place of love. And we find so many different ways to divide ourselves, that you have people viewing Black women as harsh and combative. And that's not who we are. Especially I don't think that we should be that way towards each other, but I know that I am the harshest critic of women that look like me, for a number of reasons. I just feel like there's such a high standard that I place upon Black women, but we have so much of that coming from the outside community that, the least I can do when I see a sister that looks like me is smile and say hello. But the quote that's in the book that just blew me away, it's on page 170. It says, if I make you different enough from me, then I won't need you so much. I will become strong, the best, excel in everything, become the very best because I don't dare to be anything else. It is my only chance to become good enough to become human. Then the next paragraph says, will the real Black woman please stand up? And I took a picture of that and I sent it to all of my friends because we have had conversations about how we try to be the best, we try to excel in class, and I let them know, quite frankly, I want to get my doctorate because I have something to say that I don't think the dominant culture will listen to without using the master's tools to enter the master's house. And pretty much as a form of validating my self-worth. And I keep trying, I'm working on myself because my biggest thought is that if I'm looking for this degree, this essentially piece of paper and this education to validate my self-worth, what happens when the degree is conferred and I still have those issues that not feeling accepted, feeling like an outsider within? What happens then? Where then will I place my value? Will it be in a relationship? Will it be in becoming a mother? But just everything in me has been like, I need to be better than. I even wrote about that in my cultural autobiography. I need to be better than. I need to do this. Almost to the point where I become so different from not only dominant culture, but so different from my culture that no one can really relate to who I am. And then it becomes, who am I? And so then I said it to my friend, and she was like, well, who am I? Who are you? Should I be in school? And so, she expressed anger for being taught the whole time that, black tax, that, we got to do more, be better than, just to be viewed as worthwhile by dominant culture. Um, just amazing. But another thing that she talked about is that we as black women have learned to metabolize hate like Mithridates, I think, did arsenic. Apparently, somebody, I need to look into this, used to eat bits of arsenic in bits and pieces so that to outsmart anybody that would try to come poison him. But his kisses then would still be poisonous to whoever he's interacting with. It's almost the same way with interacting with the black woman. We've become immune, we think, to hatred and anger, but it still is on the lips of us in our day-to-day interactions, in our words, in our relationships, in our job. All in all, this book is amazing. I have recommended it to all of my friends. It took me much longer to read than I thought it would, but it was definitely worth it, and by far one of the best books that I have read that has definitely left an indelible mark on who I am as a person, who I am as a student, and just moving forward.